The cold metal floor pressed against Kevin Price's boots as he walked through the narrow corridor of the mining station. His shoulders brushed the walls on both sides. Everything about Station 17 felt cramped and old. The lights flickered every few minutes. The air recycler made strange noises that nobody could fix. Kevin had been working here for 6 months, and every day felt exactly the same. He carried a tool box in one hand and a cup of terrible coffee in the other. The coffee was cold now, but he drank it anyway. On a mining station at the edge of known space, you learn not to waste anything. The station floated in an empty region where nobody came anymore. The minerals here were nearly gone. In another year, the company would shut everything down and move to a better location. Kevin reached the control room and pushed the door open with his foot. Inside, 3 other workers sat at their stations. Nobody looked up when he entered. They were all too tired or too bored to care. "Morning," Kevin said to nobody in particular. "It's afternoon," replied Laura Dixon without turning around. She was the senior technician, a woman in her 40s who had worked on mining stations for 20 years. Her hair was always tied back in a tight knot. She never smiled. Kevin shrugged and sat down at his station. The screens in front of him showed the same boring information they always did: mineral levels in the asteroid field, power consumption, air quality, temperature readings. Nothing ever changed. He took another sip of cold coffee and wondered how he had ended up here. 2 years ago, Kevin had been a student on Earth, studying geology and dreaming about exploring new worlds. Then his parents died in a transport accident. The insurance money ran out fast. He had to drop out of school and find work. The mining companies were always hiring, and they didn't ask too many questions. So here he was, watching numbers on a screen in the middle of nowhere. "Hey, Laura," called out Danny Kim from across the room. He was young, maybe 20, with messy black hair and a habit of tapping his fingers on everything. "The scanner is acting weird again," Laura sighed. "What kind of weird?" "There's something on the edge of the range. It keeps appearing and disappearing. The computer says it's a malfunction, but I've run diagnostics 3 times. Laura got up and walked over to Danny's station. Kevin watched with mild interest. Malfunctions were common on old equipment, but they usually didn't repeat after a diagnostic. He turned his chair to get a better view of Danny's screens. The scanner showed a 3-dimensional map of the space around the station. Asteroids appeared as small gray dots. The station itself was a green circle at the center. And there, at the very edge of the display, something blinked in and out of existence. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. "Could be interference from the mining drones," Laura said, but she didn't sound convinced. "All the drones are accounted for," Danny replied, "and this signature is huge, much bigger than a drone." Kevin stood and walked over to join them. The 4th worker in the room, an older man named Pete Russell, looked up from his meal but didn't move. Pete had worked on stations longer than anyone, and nothing surprised him anymore. "How big are we talking?" Kevin asked. Danny pointed at the readings. "According to this, it's the size of a small moon, but that's impossible. We would have seen something that big weeks ago when we first arrived in this sector." Laura frowned and tapped a few commands into the system. "Run a deep scan, full spectrum analysis. If there's something out there, I want to know what it is." The computer began processing the request. It would take about 10 minutes to complete a deep scan of that area. Kevin returned to his chair but kept watching Danny's screen. Something about this felt different. In 6 months of boring routine, this was the first interesting thing that had happened. The minutes passed slowly. Danny tapped his fingers on the desk. Laura stood with her arms crossed, staring at the screen. Pete continued eating his meal, occasionally glancing over with mild curiosity. Kevin found himself holding his breath without knowing why. Finally, the computer chimed. The deep scan results appeared on the screen, and everyone leaned forward to read them. "That can't be right," Danny whispered. The scan showed a massive object exactly where the blinking signature had been. It measured over 3,000 kilometers in diameter. The computer identified it as a planet, but the data was wrong in every possible way. The density was too low. The gravity readings made no sense. And most importantly, the object was surrounded by some kind of energy field that kept interfering with the sensors. "This sector was surveyed 10 years ago," Laura said quietly. "There was nothing here. No planets, no large asteroids, nothing but empty space and a few mineral deposits. So either the survey was wrong or this thing appeared out of nowhere, Kevin said. Pete finally stood up and walked over. He was a big man with gray hair and a scarred face. "Let me see," he rumbled. He studied the screen for a long moment, then grunted. "That's a cloaking field." Everyone turned to look at him. "A what?" Danny asked. "A cloaking field," Pete repeated. "I saw one once, 30 years ago. The military uses them sometimes to hide ships or stations. This energy signature is similar but much, much bigger. Someone doesn't want that planet to be found." Laura's face had gone pale. If this is a cloaked planet and it's been hidden for who knows how long, then whoever put that field there has technology far beyond anything we have. We need to report this immediately. She moved to the communication console and began typing a message to the mining company headquarters. But before she could send it, the lights in the control room flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, casting everything in a dim red glow. "What happened?" Danny asked, his voice rising in panic. Kevin checked his screens. "We just lost main power. The backup generator is running, but something drained our primary systems." Pete was already moving toward the power control station. "The energy field around that planet just expanded. It reached us." Laura tried the communication system again, but it was dead. "We've lost all long-range communications. We can't call for help." Kevin felt a knot forming in his stomach. This was no longer interesting. This was becoming dangerous. They were alone on a small mining station, cut off from help, and something very strange was happening. "Everyone stay calm," Laura said, though her own voice was shaking. "We need to assess the situation and figure out what's happening." Danny pointed at his screen with a trembling hand. "It's not just expanding, it's pulling us in." He was right. The navigation display showed that the station was slowly drifting toward the planet. The movement was gentle but steady. They were being drawn in by some kind of gravitational pull that shouldn't exist. "Can we use the thrusters to break free?" Kevin asked. Pete was already working on that. He tried firing the station's positioning thrusters, but nothing happened. "The field is affecting all our systems. I can't get the engines to respond." Laura sat down heavily in her chair. For the first time since Kevin had met her, she looked truly frightened. "We're being pulled toward an unknown planet with technology we don't understand. We need to prepare for whatever happens when we get there." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The four workers secured everything they could. They sealed pressure doors, locked down the mining equipment, and moved all the emergency supplies to the central living area. The station continued its slow drift toward the planet. Through the viewports, they could see it growing larger. The energy field made it difficult to see details, but they could make out continents and what looked like oceans. Kevin found himself working alongside Pete, carrying supply crates and checking life support systems. The older man worked with calm efficiency, never wasting a movement. Kevin tried to copy his behavior, pushing down the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. "You holding up okay, kid?" Pete asked during a brief rest. Kevin nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Pete handed him a water bottle. "First time facing something like this." "Yeah," Kevin managed to say. "You'll be fine. Just remember, panic kills faster than anything else in space. Stay focused on what needs to be done and don't think too far ahead." Kevin took a drink of water and tried to steady his breathing. Pete was right. He needed to focus on the present moment, not on the 1,000 terrible possibilities running through his mind. Laura called them back to the control room. "We're entering the planet's atmosphere. Everyone strap in. This could get rough." They secured themselves in the reinforced chairs near the control stations. The station wasn't designed for atmospheric entry, and everyone knew it. If the hull breached, they would all be dead in seconds. The first vibration started gently. The station shook like someone was tapping on the walls. Then the shaking grew stronger. Equipment rattled in the storage lockers. The lights flickered again. Kevin gripped the arms of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. Through the viewport, he could see flames licking at the hull as friction heated the metal. The energy field around the planet seemed to be guiding them, keeping the station on a controlled descent instead of letting it tumble and burn. Whoever had created this field wanted them alive. That thought should have been comforting, but it only made Kevin more nervous. Why would anyone go to such effort to bring an unknown mining station to their hidden planet? The shaking reached a peak, then suddenly stopped. The flames outside the viewport disappeared. They were through the worst part. Laura checked the external sensors, the few that were still working. "We're descending over a large landmass," she reported. "I'm seeing structures below, cities, I think, and they're huge." Danny unbuckled himself and moved to look at the display. "Those cities must be home to billions. How is this possible? How can an entire civilization exist here without anyone knowing?" Pete stood and walked to the viewport. "The cloaking field. It's been hiding this world from the galaxy. The question is why?" The station continued its descent. As they got lower, more details became visible. The cities below were unlike anything Kevin had ever seen. Towers stretched kilometers into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to hang in the air without support. Gardens and forests covered the spaces between buildings. Everything was clean and organized, laid out in patterns that looked almost mathematical. "Look at those ships," Danny said, pointing at the viewport. Dozens of small craft were rising from the surface, moving toward the station. They were sleek and elegant, nothing like the blocky industrial ships that humanity used. They formed a circle around the mining station, clearly escorting it to a specific destination. "They're guiding us to a landing platform," Laura said. "I think we're supposed to land there." The platform came into view. It was massive, larger than the entire mining station. Lights marked out a clear landing zone. The escort ships kept their formation as the station touched down with barely a bump. Whoever was controlling the descent had incredible skill. For a long moment, nobody moved. They sat in their chairs, staring at the screens and viewports, trying to process what had just happened. They had been pulled out of space, brought through a cloaking field, and landed on a hidden planet with an advanced civilization. None of it made any sense. "So what do we do now?" Danny asked quietly. Laura was about to answer when a chime echoed through the station. It was the external airlock. Someone was requesting permission to enter. The four workers looked at each other. They had no weapons. Even if they did, what good would it do against beings with technology this advanced? Laura made the decision. "Open it," she said. "Let's find out who brought us here." Pete moved to the airlock controls and activated the opening sequence. The inner door was still sealed, but they could see through the small window into the airlock chamber. A figure stood there, waiting patiently. The figure was human, or at least it looked human. A woman in her 60s with short gray hair and dark eyes. She wore a simple robe made of a material that seemed to shift colors in the light. She smiled when she saw them looking through the window. "She's human," Kevin breathed. "How is that possible?" Laura stepped forward and activated the intercom. "Who are you?" The woman's voice came through clearly. "My name is Ruth Garcia. I am the ambassador assigned to greet you. I know you must have many questions. If you open the inner door, I will do my best to answer them." Her accent was strange, mixing tones and patterns that Kevin couldn't place. She spoke English perfectly, but it sounded old-fashioned somehow. Laura looked at the others. Pete nodded. Danny looked terrified but didn't object. Kevin found himself nodding as well. They had come this far. Turning back wasn't an option anymore. The inner door hissed open. Ruth Garcia stepped into the station, moving with the careful grace of someone who had spent years in various gravity conditions. She looked around the control room with interest, her gaze taking in every detail. "Welcome to New Terra," she said. "I apologize for the dramatic arrival. Our security systems detected your station and automatically brought you here. We did not want to risk you reporting our location before we could explain." "Explain what?" Laura asked. "What is this place? Why is it hidden, and why do you look human?" Ruth smiled sadly. "I look human because I am human. We all are. Every person on this planet shares your DNA, your history, and your heritage. We are your family, separated by time and distance, but family nonetheless." Kevin felt his legs go weak. He sat down hard in his chair. "That's impossible. Humans only left Earth 300 years ago. We've only colonized about 200 worlds. There's no way humans could have built this place." "Your branch of humanity left Earth 300 years ago," Ruth corrected gently. "Our branch left 12,000 years ago." The control room fell silent. Everyone stared at Ruth as if she had just claimed to be a ghost. Pete was the first to speak. 12,000 years. That's before recorded history. before civilization as we know it. Ruth said, "It was during a very advanced civilization, one that your history books have forgotten. Your ancestors on Earth went through what we call the Great Reset, a period of catastrophic decline that erased almost all records of what came before. But before that reset, humanity had already achieved faster than light travel. We had explored the stars for 2,000 years." Danny shook his head in disbelief. "If that were true, we would have found evidence. Ruins, artifacts, something." "You have found evidence," Ruth replied, "but it was misidentified or ignored because it didn't fit the accepted timeline. Ancient structures built with impossible precision, metal objects found in geological layers where they shouldn't exist, mathematical knowledge in primitive cultures that seems too advanced. All of these things are remnants of what came before." Laura sank into a chair. "This is insane. You're telling us that everything we learned about human history is wrong." "Not wrong," Ruth said. "Incomplete. Your historians did the best they could with the evidence they had. They just didn't know that humanity had risen and fallen before, multiple times across thousands of years." Kevin's mind was racing. If what Ruth said was true, it changed everything. Every textbook, every archaeological theory, every assumption about human development would have to be reconsidered. "Why are you telling us this now?" he asked. "Why reveal yourselves to us?" Ruth's expression became serious. "Because your expansion into space has brought you close to our borders. We have been watching Earth's progress for centuries. We've seen your civilization grow from scattered city-states to a unified planetary government. We've watched you reach for the stars again, and now you're approaching the point where you will discover us whether we wish it or not." "Better to meet us on your terms than ours," Pete said slowly. "Exactly," Ruth agreed. "We wanted the first contact to be peaceful. Give you time to understand what you found before making any decisions." Laura stood up, her scientific training overcoming her shock. "You said your people left Earth 12,000 years ago. How many of you are there? Just this planet?" Ruth hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. Finally, she spoke. "New Terra is our capital world, but we are not alone. We have spread across the galaxy over thousands of years. Currently, our civilization spans 317 worlds." The number hit Kevin like a physical blow. 317 worlds. That was more than Earth's entire colonial empire, much more. "How many people?" Danny asked in a whisper. "Approximately 30 billion across all our worlds," Ruth said. "New Terra alone has 8 billion residents." Laura sat back down. 30 billion humans that nobody knows about. 300 worlds that aren't on any map. This is the biggest secret in the galaxy." "It is," Ruth agreed. "And it's a secret we have kept for very good reasons. Reasons that you need to understand before you leave this planet." "Leave?" Kevin asked. "So we're not prisoners?" Ruth looked surprised. "Of course not. You are our guests. When we have finished explaining our situation, you will be free to return to your people and report what you've learned. We only ask that you listen first." Pete crossed his arms. "All right, we're listening. Tell us why you've been hiding." Ruth moved to the viewport and looked out at the city below. "To understand that, you need to know about the Galactic Council. You've encountered them, yes. The alliance of alien species that controls most of known space." Laura nodded. "Earth joined the Council 30 years ago. We're still considered junior members, but we're part of the galactic community." "The Council, as you know it, was formed 6,000 years ago," Ruth said. "Before that, the galaxy was very different. Individual species controlled small territories. There were frequent conflicts over resources and territory. It was a chaotic time." She turned back to face them. "Then humanity arrived. Our ships began exploring the galaxy and we expanded quickly, much faster than the older species expected. Within 1,000 years, we had colonized hundreds of worlds. We had the largest territory and the fastest growing population." "That must have made the other species nervous," Danny said. "Terrified," Ruth corrected. "They saw humanity as an existential threat, a young species that was growing too fast, too strong, so they formed a coalition. 5 of the most powerful species joined together with one goal: to eliminate humanity before we became too powerful to stop." Kevin felt a chill run down his spine. "They attacked you," Ruth's face hardened. "They tried. The war lasted 30 years. It was the bloodiest conflict in galactic history. Billions died on both sides." Entire planets were rendered uninhabitable. The destruction was beyond anything the galaxy had seen before or since. "Who won?" Laura asked, though something in her voice suggested she already knew the answer. "We did," Ruth said quietly. "Humanity won. We defeated the coalition and could have conquered the galaxy. We had the military strength, the technology, and the motivation. After what they had done to us, many humans wanted revenge." She paused, and when she continued, her voice was filled with old pain. "But our leaders made a different choice. They remembered why our ancestors left Earth. They remembered the cycles of violence and domination that had nearly destroyed our homeworld, and they decided to break the cycle." Pete leaned forward. "How?" "We offered peace," Ruth said. "But not just any peace. We proposed the Treaty of Silent Skies. Under this treaty, humanity would withdraw from galactic affairs entirely. We would hide our worlds behind cloaking fields. We would erase ourselves from galactic maps and records. We would become a myth, a story that few believed. In exchange," she continued, "the other species would form a true galactic government. The Council would be created to prevent future wars, and they would leave Earth alone, allowing your branch of humanity to redevelop at its own pace without interference." The control room was completely silent. Kevin tried to wrap his mind around what Ruth was describing. An entire civilization choosing to hide, to give up its place in the galaxy, all to protect Earth and prevent more bloodshed. "You sacrificed everything," Kevin said softly. "Your territory, your influence, your place in history, all for us." Ruth smiled sadly. "Not for you specifically, for the idea of humanity, for the chance to let our species try again, to maybe do better than we did. And we've watched from the shadows as Earth rebuilt civilization. We saw your struggles, your wars, your slow progress toward unity. We celebrated when you achieved space flight again. When you joined the Galactic Council, we were proud." Laura stood and began pacing. "The Council knows about all this. They have to. They're part of the treaty." "Their leadership knows," Ruth confirmed. "It's one of the galaxy's most closely guarded secrets. Only the highest levels of each species' government are aware. The general populations believe humanity is exactly what you appear to be, a young species just beginning to explore the stars." "Why keep it secret from their own people?" Danny asked. "Because the truth is dangerous," Ruth replied. "If the galaxy learned that humans had been the dominant power 6,000 years ago, if they knew we chose to step back rather than conquer, it would create massive social upheaval. It would force every species to question their assumptions about power, about leadership, about their place in the universe." She moved closer to the group. "More importantly, it would reveal humanity's greatest strength, not our technology or our military might, but our capacity for sacrifice, our ability to choose the difficult path when it's the right path. That kind of moral authority is more dangerous to the established order than any weapon." Kevin stood and walked to the viewport. Below, the city of New Terra stretched to the horizon. Millions of humans living in secret, maintaining a civilization that had lasted thousands of years. It was beautiful and tragic at the same time. "What happens now?" he asked. "You said you're revealing yourselves because Earth is getting too close. What do you want from us?" Ruth moved to stand beside him. "We want you to take this information back to Earth, to your leaders, to your people. They deserve to know the truth about humanity's history, about what we sacrificed and why." "And then what?" Laura asked. "Earth decides what to do with the information." "Yes," Ruth said. "You can choose to keep the secret to maintain the status quo, or you can reveal the truth to the galaxy and face whatever consequences that brings, or something in between. The choice belongs to Earth now. But whatever you choose," she added, "know this, we are ready. If Earth decides to reveal our existence, we will stand with you. If you choose to remain silent, we will continue as we have. We are family, separated by time but united by blood. Your decision will be our decision." The weight of responsibility settled over Kevin like a heavy blanket. He was just a mining station worker. 6 months ago, he had been watching numbers on a screen, counting down the days until his contract ended. Now he was standing on a hidden planet, learning secrets that would change the galaxy forever. He looked at his companions. Laura stood with her arms crossed, her scientific mind already working through the implications. Danny looked overwhelmed, his eyes wide and unfocused. Pete remained calm, but Kevin could see the tension in his shoulders. They were all feeling the same weight. The hidden planet had been revealed, and now nothing would ever be the same. 6 months had passed since Commander Greg Harris returned to Earth with news that shattered every assumption humanity held about its place among the stars. The governments of Earth met in emergency sessions for weeks. Scientists pored over the data Katie and Carl brought back. Military leaders debated strategies and possibilities. Religious figures struggled to reconcile ancient texts with this new understanding of human history. But the decision that shaped everything came from an unexpected source. Maya Chen was 17 years old and had never left Earth's surface. She lived in New Singapore, studied quantum physics at the university, and spent her free time writing poetry about stars she had only seen through telescopes. She had no connection to the military, no political influence, and no reason to believe her voice would matter in the greatest decision humanity had ever faced. Until she wrote an essay. The essay was simple. She wrote about what it meant to be human, about the courage it took for ancient humans to hide themselves away so their cousins on Earth could grow without the shadow of war hanging over them. She wrote about sacrifice and hope, about the responsibility that came with knowing the truth. Most importantly, she wrote about the choice facing humanity not as a political decision or a strategic calculation, but as a moral imperative. The essay went viral across Earth's networks. Within days, billions had read it. Within weeks, it had sparked a movement. Young people across every continent demanded that Earth accept its heritage and reunite with New Terra openly. Consequences be damned. They argued that hiding the truth dishonored the sacrifice their ancestors had made. The Galactic Council watched these developments with growing alarm. On the planet Kira's Prime, capital world of the Council, Ambassador Vincent Parker sat in his office reviewing the latest intelligence reports. Vincent had served as Earth's chief diplomat to the Council for 8 years. He was good at his job, skilled at navigating the complex politics between dozens of alien species, each with their own agendas and ancient grievances. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this. His assistant, a young woman named Nicole Brooks, entered without knocking. Her face was pale. She held a data tablet that trembled slightly in her hands. Vincent looked up from his desk and saw the fear in her eyes. He had known Nicole for 3 years and had never seen her rattled. She had negotiated with species that considered humans little more than interesting animals. She had maintained her composure during trade disputes that nearly sparked armed conflicts, but now she looked terrified. "What is it?" Vincent asked quietly. Nicole placed the tablet on his desk. "The Council has issued an emergency decree. They're demanding Earth make a public statement within 72 hours. Either we officially deny any connection to New Terra and the hidden colonies, or we face immediate sanctions." Vincent read through the decree carefully. The language was diplomatic, but the threat was clear. If Earth acknowledged its connection to the 300 hidden worlds, the Council would consider it an act of deception that violated the spirit of galactic law. Trade agreements would be suspended. Human ships would be barred from Council space. Earth's colonies would be isolated. "They're scared," Vincent said after a long silence. "Of course they are," Nicole replied. "If the truth comes out, every species in the Council will know that humans could have dominated the galaxy 6,000 years ago and chose not to. It makes them look weak, petty. Their entire identity is built on being the ancient, wise civilizations teaching the younger races. They can't handle the reality that they're the children and we're the adults." Vincent stood and walked to the window. Outside, the gleaming towers of Kira's Prime stretched toward the sky. This city had stood for 15,000 years, built by the Kira's people who claimed to be the oldest spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. But that claim was a lie, and everyone with clearance high enough to know the truth understood it. "Contact Earth," Vincent said. "I need to speak with President Martinez immediately." The communication took 30 minutes to establish, routed through multiple secure channels. When President Laura Martinez appeared on the holographic display, she looked as exhausted as Vincent felt. "Ambassador Parker," the president said, "I assume you've seen the Council's decree." "I have. Madame President, they're trying to force our hand. If we deny the connection, we abandon our cousins and betray everything they sacrificed for us. If we acknowledge it, we face economic and political isolation that could cripple our expansion for decades. President Martinez nodded slowly. I've been in consultation with New Terra. High Counselor Helen Martinez, my distant ancestor as it turns out, has offered a third option. Which is, they propose revealing themselves, but not all at once. New Terra would drop its stealth field and present itself as a single newly discovered human colony. The other 300 worlds would remain hidden for now. It gives Earth plausible deniability while still honoring the connection. Vincent considered this carefully. It was a compromise, a middle path, but something about it felt wrong. Madame President, with respect, that's just another lie. A smaller one perhaps, but still a deception. Is that really the foundation we want for humanity's future in the galaxy? The President was quiet for a long moment. No, she said finally. No, it's not, but I'm trying to avoid a war, Ambassador, because that's what this could become if we're not careful. A war we would win, Nicole interjected. Both the President and Vincent looked at her in surprise. She straightened, refusing to back down. I'm sorry, but someone needs to say it. Between Earth's colonies and New Terra's hidden worlds, we have the largest fleet in known space. Our technology is more advanced. Our people are more adaptable. If the Council wants a fight, they'll lose. And that's exactly what we can't allow to happen, Vincent said firmly. The moment we start thinking in terms of military superiority, we become the very thing our ancestors fled from. We become the empire that chooses domination over cooperation. President Martinez sighed. I have less than 72 hours to make a decision that will affect billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. I need your assessment, Ambassador. You've worked with these species for years. If we tell the complete truth, how will they really react? Vincent returned to his desk and pulled up files on each council species. He had studied them for years, learned their histories, their cultures, their fears and ambitions. Now he looked at them with new eyes, seeing patterns he had missed before. The truth is complicated, he began. The Kiras will see it as a threat to their cultural identity as the galaxy's eldest civilization. The Viren Collective will view it as a strategic opportunity to weaken the Council by sowing discord. The Talmor Confederacy will likely be fascinated and want to study how we managed such an elaborate deception for so long. The Zealoth, being a warrior culture, will respect the military achievement but be insulted that we hid our strength. He paused, looking directly at the President's holographic image. But here's what matters. Every single one of them will be afraid. Not because we're strong, but because we proved we don't need to use our strength. That's the real threat to their worldview. They've spent thousands of years believing that power must be exercised, that strength demands dominance. We showed that's not true, and that idea is more dangerous to them than any weapon. President Martinez closed her eyes briefly. So there's no good option. We either lie and dishonor our heritage, or we tell the truth and watch the galaxy descend into chaos. There might be one other path, Nicole said quietly. Both Vincent and the President turned to her. But if we don't make this decision alone, what if we bring the Council into the process? Vincent frowned. Explain. The decree gives us 72 hours to make a statement. What if that statement is an invitation? We invite the Council leadership to New Terra. Let them see it with their own eyes. Let them meet the people, understand the history, and then together we decide how to move forward. It transforms this from a human decision forced on the galaxy into a shared choice about the future. Vincent felt a spark of hope. It was risky, but it honored both the truth and the need for cooperation. Madame President, I think she's right. If we control the narrative, if we make this about partnership rather than revelation, we might be able to guide the outcome. President Martinez considered this for several minutes. Very well. Ambassador Parker, you have 48 hours to arrange a delegation. I want representatives from every council species. Transport them to New Terra. Let them see everything, and pray that transparency proves to be the right choice. The next 2 days were a blur of frantic diplomatic activity. Vincent personally contacted every council ambassador extending the invitation. Some were suspicious, others were intrigued, a few were openly hostile, but in the end, curiosity won out. Every species agreed to send a representative. The delegation assembled on a neutral station orbiting Kira's prime. 43 beings from 43 different worlds, representing the full diversity of galactic civilization. Vincent looked at them gathered in the departure lounge and felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The Kira's representative was an elderly statesman named Thelron, his crystalline skin reflecting the station's lights in rainbow patterns. The Viren sent Coordinator Zex, a being whose body shifted between different quantum states. From the Talmor Confederacy came Scholar Murax, her 6 arms holding various recording devices. The Zeloth warrior Kreth stood apart from the others, his massive frame covered in battle scars. And there were 39 others, each representing civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, each believing they understood the fundamental nature of galactic power. They were about to learn they were wrong. The transport ship was one of Earth's newest diplomatic vessels, the Aurora. Captain Ben Torres greeted each delegate personally as they boarded, his military bearing softened by genuine warmth. He had been briefed on the mission's importance but not its full details. That would come soon enough. As the Aurora departed the station and entered faster-than-light travel, Vincent gathered the delegates in the main conference hall. The mood was tense. Thelron spoke first, his voice like crystal chimes. "Ambassador Parker, we have traveled across council space at your urgent request. Many of us left important duties to attend this mysterious summons. We would appreciate an explanation." Vincent had prepared for this moment, but still his heart raced as he stood before them. "Honored delegates, 6 months ago, one of our exploration vessels made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about humanity's history and our place in the galaxy. Rather than simply announce this discovery, Earth's government felt it was crucial that you see it firsthand and help us decide together how to proceed." Kreth, the Zeloth warrior, growled deep in his chest. "You speak in riddles, human. What discovery could possibly require this elaborate presentation?" "We are taking you to a planet that has been hidden from galactic view for 6,000 years, Vincent said calmly. "A planet inhabited by 30 billion humans who are our genetic and cultural ancestors. A planet that is part of a network of over 300 hidden human colonies spanning a third of the galaxy." The silence that followed was absolute. Then chaos erupted. Thelron surged to his feet, his crystalline body flashing with angry reds and oranges. "Impossible. The Kiras have surveyed every sector for 15,000 years. There are no undiscovered civilizations of that magnitude. Unless they possess stealth technology superior to your detection capabilities," Scholar Murex said thoughtfully, her scientific mind already working through the implications. "The energy requirements would be enormous but theoretically possible." Coordinator Zex's quantum form stabilized briefly, a sign of intense focus. "This explains much: the gaps in historical records, the peculiar restrictions in certain sectors, the treaty zones that made no strategic sense. They were hiding your colonies." "Who knew of this?" Kreth demanded. "Which council leaders participated in this deception?" Vincent raised his hands for calm. "I understand your anger and confusion. That's why we're taking you to see New Terra, to understand the full history, to learn why this secret was kept and what it means for the future. But I need you to approach this with open minds. What you're about to witness will challenge every assumption you hold about galactic history and human civilization." The next 18 hours were tense. The delegates huddled in small groups, speaking in their own languages, occasionally shooting suspicious glances at Vincent and the human crew. Nicole moved among them, answering what questions she could, deflecting others with promises that all would be revealed soon. When the Aurora finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of New Terra's system, Vincent called all the delegates to the observation deck. As one, they watched the viewscreen as the stealth field was deactivated. The transformation was stunning. What had appeared to be empty space suddenly filled with light. The planet appeared first, its surface covered in the intricate patterns of human civilization. Then the orbital structures materialized, vast rings of stations and habitats. Finally, the ships became visible, thousands upon thousands of vessels moving in carefully coordinated patterns. Scholar Murax's recording devices worked frantically, capturing every detail. The population density, the infrastructure development, the technological sophistication. This civilization is older and more advanced than most council worlds. How is this possible? Because we've been out here for 12,000 years, said a new voice. High Counselor Helen Martinez had materialized on the observation deck via holographic projection. She stood tall and dignified, her silver-streaked hair catching the light from the planet below. I am Helen Martinez, elected leader of New Terra and spokesperson for the Hidden Worlds Collective. On behalf of 317 human colonies and a combined population of 82 billion souls, I welcome you, and I apologize for the deception that has lasted far too long. Over the next 3 days, the delegates toured New Terra. They walked through cities that had stood for thousands of years. They met with historians who explained how humanity had split 12,000 years ago, how the hidden worlds had been established to preserve human knowledge and potential, while Earth recovered from near self-destruction. They learned about the war 6,000 years ago, when the Council species had tried to destroy the expanding human colonies and failed spectacularly. They saw the casualty figures, the battle records, the evidence of a conflict that humanity had won decisively. And they learned about the Treaty of Silent Skies, the agreement that had ended the war and hidden humanity away, giving Earth a chance to develop without the shadow of that terrible conflict. On the third evening, the delegates gathered in New Terra's Grand Council chamber for a final meeting. The mood had shifted dramatically from the anger and suspicion of 3 days earlier. Now there was something else in the air. Understanding, perhaps. Or maybe just exhaustion from having their worldview completely overturned. Thelron spoke first. The angry reds and oranges had faded from his crystalline body, replaced by cooler blues and greens. I have lived for 800 years. I have served the Kira's people in many capacities. I believed I understood the galaxy, its history, its fundamental truths. In 3 days, you have shown me that I understood nothing. He turned to face Helen directly. My people claim to be the eldest civilization, the wisest, the most culturally advanced. But you have shown us something we never achieved, the wisdom to step back, the courage to hide your strength, the patience to wait thousands of years for the right moment. These are virtues we speak of but do not practice. Scholar Murax nodded her 6 heads in agreement. The scientific implications alone are staggering. Your faster-than-light technology predates ours by thousands of years. Your biological sciences, your energy systems, your materials engineering, all more advanced than current council standards. You could have dominated the galaxy technologically and chose not to. You embarrass us, Kreth said bluntly. The Zeloth warrior's voice was rough with emotion. My people value strength above all else. We teach our children that power must be demonstrated, that weakness invites attack. But you possessed overwhelming power and demonstrated ultimate strength by restraining it. You make our philosophy seem crude and foolish. Coordinator Zex's quantum form shimmered. The Virin collective exists in multiple probability states simultaneously. We see many possible futures at once, but even we did not see this. The implications for the Council's future are profound and troubling. What happens now is up to all of us, Helen said gently. Earth did not reveal this secret to threaten or intimidate anyone. We revealed it because continuing the lie dishonors the sacrifice our ancestors made. But we need your help to decide how to move forward. The Council populations will demand answers, Thelron said. When word of this spreads, and it will spread, there will be panic, fear, calls for action against the human threat. Then we control the narrative, Nicole suggested. She had been quiet during most of the tour, but now she stepped forward with confidence. We don't let rumor and speculation drive the story. We tell it ourselves together. A joint announcement from the Council and the Hidden Worlds, explaining the history and the reasons for the secrecy. And we frame it not as a threat but as an opportunity, Scholar Murax added, her scientific mind already working through possibilities. Humanity has technology and knowledge that could benefit all Council species. You've been developing in isolation for thousands of years. Imagine what we could achieve together. You want to integrate the hidden worlds into the council, Coordinator Zex asked. That would shift the balance of power dramatically. Humanity would become the dominant voice in galactic affairs simply through numbers. We don't want dominance, Vincent said firmly. If we wanted that, we could have taken it 6,000 years ago. What we want is partnership, equal voices working toward common goals. The hidden worlds can share their knowledge gradually, carefully, in ways that benefit everyone without disrupting existing systems. And Earth, Kreth asked. How does your home world fit into this? Helen smiled softly. Earth is our heart, the place where humanity began, where our ancestors chose peace over destruction. Earth's voice will always be important to us, but we are separate civilizations that have developed in different directions for thousands of years. We share DNA and history, but we've built different societies. That diversity is our strength. The discussions continued late into the night. Plans were made, announcements drafted, timelines established. It was decided that the revelation would happen in stages over 2 years. First, New Terra would be formally acknowledged. Then, gradually, the other hidden worlds would be revealed, 10 or 15 at a time, allowing the galaxy to adjust. Technology sharing would begin immediately but carefully, focused on medical advances and environmental restoration techniques that had no military applications. Cultural exchanges would be encouraged. Trade agreements would be renegotiated to include the hidden worlds. Most importantly, the Council's governing structure would be reformed. Humanity would not dominate, but neither would the old species maintain their unchallenged authority. A new system would emerge, one based on cooperation and mutual respect rather than ancient claims of superiority. As the delegates prepared to depart New Terra and return to their homeworlds, Thelron approached Vincent privately. The Kiera's statesman's crystalline body glowed with soft, contemplative purples. Ambassador Parker, I must ask you something that has troubled me greatly these past 3 days. Of course, Vincent replied. Your people possessed the power to rule the galaxy 6,000 years ago. You chose restraint. But what happens when the next generation of humans, those born knowing their true strength, decides that restraint is no longer necessary? What stops humanity from becoming the empire you resisted becoming before? Vincent had wrestled with this same question during the long nights since Greg Harris's discovery. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe nothing stops us. Maybe restraint has to be chosen anew by each generation. Maybe that's the point. Power doesn't corrupt automatically. It corrupts when we forget to question it, when we stop choosing deliberately to limit ourselves. He looked out at the planet below, thinking of the billions of humans who had lived and died in secret, maintaining a lie so their cousins could grow freely. Our ancestors built a civilization on the principle that power should serve peace, not the other way around. They passed that principle down through 300 generations. Will it last forever? Probably not. But it's lasted this long, and that gives me hope. Thelron was silent for a long moment. You humans are either the wisest species in the galaxy or the most dangerous. Perhaps you are both. Time will reveal which aspect dominates. 3 weeks later, Vincent stood in the great assembly hall of the Galactic Council on Kiera's Prime. Every seat was filled. Representatives from all 43 member species had gathered, along with observers from dozens of unaligned worlds. The chamber buzzed with speculation and rumor. Everyone knew something significant was about to be announced, but only those who had traveled to New Terra knew the truth. President Martinez stood at the central podium, flanked by High Counselor Helen Martinez on one side and Thelron on the other. The symbolism was deliberate. Earth, the hidden worlds, and the Council united. Honored delegates, observers, and citizens of the galaxy, President Martinez began, her voice steady and clear. Today we share with you a truth that has been hidden for 6,000 years, a truth about humanity's past, present, and future, a truth that will change how we all understand galactic history. She spoke for an hour, laying out the complete story. The splitting of humanity 12,000 years ago, the establishment of the hidden worlds, the war and the treaty. Long silence that allowed Earth to grow, the recent discovery and the decision to reveal the truth. When she finished, the chamber erupted. Some species demanded verification. Others called for immediate military action. A few praised humanity's restraint. The chaos lasted for hours until Thelrun stood and raised his crystalline hands for silence. "I have walked the streets of New Terra," he said, his voice ringing through the chamber. "I have seen the evidence with my own eyes. Every claim made here today is true. Humanity has existed as a major galactic power for thousands of years while we remained ignorant. They possessed the strength to dominate us and chose not to. They chose patience. They chose peace. They chose to give their cousins on Earth a chance to grow without the weight of ancient conflicts." He turned to face the assembly directly. "The question before us is not whether we can trust humanity. They have already proven themselves more trustworthy than we dared hope. The question is whether we can live up to the standard they have set, whether we can match their wisdom with our own, whether we can build a future worthy of the sacrifice they made." The vote took 3 days. In the end, the resolution passed with overwhelming support. The hidden worlds would be formally recognized. Integration would proceed gradually. The council's structure would be reformed to ensure fair representation. And humanity, both from Earth and the hidden worlds, would take its rightful place as a leading voice in galactic affairs. But not through conquest, not through intimidation, through the power of an idea that had endured for 6,000 years. That true strength lies in knowing when not to use your strength. 2 months after the announcement, Maya Chen, the 17-year-old girl whose essay had started the movement, stood on the observation deck of a transport ship headed for New Terra. She had been invited by High Counselor Helen Martinez to study at the oldest human university in the galaxy. As the planet came into view, Maya thought about her essay, about the words she had written about sacrifice and hope. She had written them believing she was talking about ancient history, about decisions made thousands of years ago by people she would never know. But now she understood. The sacrifice wasn't ancient history. It was ongoing. Every generation of humans on the hidden worlds had chosen to maintain the secret, to live in isolation, to pass up opportunities for glory and recognition, all to honor the promise made by their ancestors. And now it was her generation's turn. Earth's young people and the young people of the hidden worlds would have to decide what to do with this legacy. Would they build bridges or walls? Would they use their combined strength to help or to dominate? Would they remember the lessons of the past or repeat its mistakes? Maya didn't have the answers, but as the ship descended toward New Terra, toward the cities built by humans who had chosen sacrifice over supremacy, she felt hopeful. Because if humanity could maintain its values for 6,000 years in hiding, surely it could maintain them in the light. The hidden planet had been revealed. The galaxy had struggled to believe the truth, but belief was just the beginning. Now came the hard work of building a future worthy of the past, and that future would be shaped not by ancient treaties or military might, but by the daily choices of ordinary people. People like Maya, like Vincent, like Greg and Katie and Carl. People who understood that being human meant something more than DNA and shared history. It meant choosing wisely, even when the easy choice beckoned. It meant restraining power when power could be unleashed. It meant remembering that strength without wisdom is just violence waiting to happen. As Maya stepped off the transport onto the soil of New Terra for the first time, she whispered a promise to herself. She would honor the sacrifice. She would learn the wisdom. And she would help build a galaxy where humans from all worlds, alongside their alien neighbors, could thrive together. Because that was the real truth the galaxy couldn't believe. Not that humans were strong, but that they were kind. Not that they could conquer, but that they chose not to. Not that they had hidden for 6,000 years, but that they had used those years to preserve the very best of what it meant to be human. And now that truth would reshape the stars. The end.